I say very briefly, and I'll probably spend 10 minutes. Back on page 50, where we left off on Wednesday, where the priest is talking to the kings, and he talks about what their Greek friend, the fox, the tutor, says. He says, they, the Greeks, demand to see such things clearly, as if the gods were no more than letters written in a book. And what he means by that is they mean to understand everything rationally and logically. He goes on and explains, I, king, have dealt with the gods for 3 generations of men, and I know that they dazzle our eyes. What does that literally mean, to dazzle? They blind. Like looking at the sun. You look at the sun, you see the sun, right? For how long? Till you go blind. Okay? They flow in and out of one another like eddies on a river, and nothing that is said clearly can be said truly about them. Now, he then says, holy places are dark places. He doesn't use this language, but what he's talking about is what is called in the medieval church, at least, the via negativa. The via, the way, negative. The negative way. Okay? What is that talking about? It's the negative way to God, or the negative way to talk about God. What does that mean? You talk about God by what he is not. Okay? In the Orthodox Church, in one of the prayers of the Orthodox Church, there's this big, long prayer. It's the preparation for communion or Eucharist. And God is described, partially in that, as inexpressible, incomprehensible, invisible, unattainable. Notice, those are all negatives. That's the negative way. It's also called apophatic. That is, you cannot declare clearly about it. Okay? Inexpressible. One medieval theologian in the Western Church said, God is that beyond which we cannot think. You can't think of any. That was his proof, his ontological proof for the existence of God. You can't think of anything beyond, anything higher than God. And so if you can think of something that high, it must exist. Okay? Incomprehensible. Sit down with a buddy over a beer or a scotch or a cigar or whatever and try to comprehend the nature of divinity, of God. Little puny human minds, what? Can't do it. Okay? Invisible. Can God be seen? No. Not even, Old Testament, kind of stuff. You can't see God. Why? Well, God tells Moses, no one can see me and live. So, that's what Lewis is working with in here. He then goes on and says, it's life and strength, not knowledge and words, that we get in them. Knowledge and words are what? Things you can talk about. Things you can rationalize. Okay? He says, you can't do that. It's not what the gods, so to speak, are for. Okay? So, we're going to skip a bit. And we find out, page 55, 54 and 55, the priest hasn't finished. He's there to deliver his sentence of sorts. Okay? And what is it? The lot fell on your daughter. King, she's the accursed. Princess Istra must be the great offering. Notice she's both the blessed and the accursed. She's the perfect one, but she's the one who's cursed and therefore must be offered as a sacrifice. Okay? But look over at page 54 for just a moment, right in the middle of the page. So the priest has been talking. The fox is there, the king is there, and we're told this was the worst yet. The fox had taught me to think, at any rate to speak. What does that mean? To think, at any rate to speak. Talking without thinking? That is, saying, I understand or know something, but not really. of the priest as of a mere schemer and a politic man who put into the mouth of Ungit whatever might most increase his own power in lands. In other words, the fox had taught a rule to think the priest is just what? A politician. He just says things that will do what? Line his pockets. Make him wealthy. Okay? I saw it was not so. She's been taught one way to understand the priest. That's the taught is what? Thought, words, language. Her experience, however, of the priest tells him not true. He was sure of Ungit. This guy was a dyed-in-the-wool believer. Okay? Looking at him as he sat with the dagger, pricking him, and his blind eyes unwinking, fixed on the king, and his face like an eagle's face, I was sure too. What does a rule mean? What is the priest ready to do right here at this moment? No.
To die.
He's ready to die. For what? For a false belief that by spouting off stuff he can make himself rich? No. Who would be stupid enough to die for that? Nobody would, right? He really believes what he's saying, and he's ready to die for that belief. Our real enemy was not immortal. Who's the our? Mine? The kings? The peoples? No. Our real enemy is who? Ungit. The gods. The room was full of spirits and the horror of holiness. Now, you don't usually hear, go to any Christian church in the United States and you don't hear people talk about holiness being horrible. So what does a rule mean? How is holiness a horror? Well, what does the fox think of holiness? In other words, a rule is saying, we've created these images that we ascribe to holiness. And what is she now aware of? Those images aren't even close. Okay? You've heard the phrase, be careful what you ask for, because you might get it. Okay? Be careful, a rule is kind of suggesting, of talking or seeking holiness. Why? Because when it comes, it might scare the bejeebies out of you. Okay? So that's when the priest says, the lot fell on your daughter. Okay? What does the king think at this moment? Whew. It's not me. That's why he had the dagger at the priest's neck. He was thinking it's going to be him. Okay? So the fox kind of goes to bat for Istra, pages 58, 59, and says, I'd lose not only my throne, page 59, but my life to save the princess, if I were a king and a father. Now, that's a very subtle way of giving the king advice, right? Come on! Be the real king. Be her father. What? Save her. How? Die in her stead. Die in her place. Well, maybe. Because what does he next say? Let us fight. Let's protect her. Let's kill that damn priest. Let's topple that stupid stone. Okay? At the worst, we should all die innocent. That is, we'll die innocent of what? Her blood. Better than going down yonder. What does he mean by down yonder? And notice it's capitalized. To the land of the dead. And yet, what has the fox repeatedly told O'Rule? There is no land of the dead. Because what happens when you die? You disappear. Not that you appear somewhere else, you literally dissolve into your elements. What's he showing us here? His mind says one thing, and his heart says something else. Okay? So the king goes on and says, it's really, I'm the one who should be pitied. I mean, I'm the one who's losing a daughter here, really. I mean, yeah. Because, she's the one who has to die, but he's the one who should be pitied. Okay? Let's see here. Arul kind of takes to Bardia, who's one of the guards, and he says, you'd have made a good man, and he doesn't really follow that. And we go to chapter 7, and Bardia lets her in, Arul, into the room where Psyche is kind of being prepared. Okay? And we're given this image. Psyche sat upon the bed, page 67, with a lamp burning beside her. Of course, I was at once in her arms and saw this only in a flash. But the picture, Psyche, a bed, a lamp, is everlasting. Why? Because of what's going to happen later. What happens later is what burns this image into Arul's mind. Okay? This image happens when? Long before the offering. Okay? This is before Psyche goes off to the tree. Okay? So, she's there to talk with Psyche. What does she think she's going to do for Psyche in this conversation?
Comfort her.
Did you say convert or comfort?
Comfort.
Comfort her. She's going to comfort her. Why? What must Psyche be thinking? According to a rule. I'm going to die, and this is what? What does everybody say when something really bad happens to them? This isn't fair. So she thinks Psyche must be thinking that. And what do we see? Psyche says, page 68, haven't you learned any of the lessons the fox has taught us? Today I shall meet cruel men, cowards and liars, the envious and the drunken. They will be like that. Why? Notice, this is kind of important. Because they do not know what is good from what is bad. In other words, they are cruel, cowards, liars, envious, and drunken. Why? They don't know any better. The fox hasn't taught them to think. People are the way they are because they are evil. No. People are the way they are because they don't know any better. So she goes on. This is an evil which has fallen upon them, not upon me. Why? Because Psyche is saying, I do know good from bad. I do know better. They are to be pitied. Okay, now we could really get all applicable with this. Who might she be talking about today? Now, depending on your political beliefs, some of you might be saying, well, she might be talking about Donald Trump. She might be talking about Wayne LaPierre, the vice president of the NRA. She might be talking about, blah, 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 blah. Right? She might be talking about Nicholas Cruz, the guy who walked into the high school with an AR-15 and shot 17 people and killed them. They are to be pitied. Rather than what? Louder? Glorified? I don't think anybody wants to glorify him. Judged. Damned. Okay? And a rule. How can Psyche keeps going on. Promise you won't do anything stupid, right? You're not going to kill yourself, for example. You got to promise me. Oh, your heart is of iron. In other, how could you be so cold? How could you be like steel? What does O'Rule want from Psyche? What does O'Rule need from Psyche?
On her shoulder pretty much.
She wants Psyche to break down and cry on her shoulder so that O'Rule can do/become what? Like a mother to her. In other words, O'Rule is the one who needs something. She needs to be able to express love. She needs to be able to give comfort. Psyche doesn't need it. Psyche goes on, as for the king, give him my duty or whatever is proper. Okay? As for Redival, send her your curse. Now, why does O'Rule say that? Well, you could kind of say it's all Redival's fault. Because Redival was the one who saw Psyche kiss the little child and then told O'Rule, and everything just kind of snowballed after that. Send her your curse. And if the dead can, notice she doesn't get to finish her sentence. No. She also does what she doesn't know. Anybody else in history/literature/Western culture, civilization, say anything like that? When? When he's hanging on the cross. Father, forgive them. Why? For they know not what they do. Who's he saying that to and about? The Jews and the Romans. Okay? And then somebody else says it just a few weeks later. The first murder. Stephen. He gets taken out. Saul, is sitting there holding all these guys' coats. And Stephen is taken outside the city and stoned to death. And what does he say? Forgive them. They know not what they do. O'Rule has to hear Psyche say this. No, not even for you, Psyche, will I pity Redival. Nope, not going to happen. She's to hell with her. That's cold. What does Psyche say? You want to be Redival? No? Then pity her. In other words, if you don't want to be like her, what? Then show her pity. She's saying Redival didn't show pity towards me, for example. Okay? But I'm going to show pity towards her. If you don't want to be like her, you better start opening your heart a little bit. She says, if I'm allowed to give my jewels as I please, you must keep all the things that you and I have really loved. What does she mean by her jewels? Her literal jewels? No. The things she holds precious. Okay? Here, it's kind of her advice. O'Rule says, look up, Maya. You'll break my heart. Psyche says, you'll break my heart, and I to be a bride. I'm getting married. It's like, in the morning, I'm getting married. We are the blood of the gods. We must not shame our lineage. So she goes on and says, I've been talking with the priest. Bottom of page 70. I never knew him before. He's not what the fox thinks. Well, O'Rule now knows also he's not what the fox thinks, right? I mean, she's already told us that. So, she's told us that. Psyche now tells us that. So that means they should be what? They should be in agreement. Do you know, sister, I've come to feel more and more that the fox hasn't the whole truth. Oh, he has much of it. It'd be dark as a dungeon within me but for his teaching, and yet I can't really put it. He calls the whole world a city, but what's a city built on? There's earth beneath and outside the wall. That is, what exists outside the wall of the city? Well, isn't that where the food comes from? As well as the dangers? Things growing, rotting, strengthening, poisoning, things shining wet. What's she talking about? Everything. These are the city walls of Glome. Everything that within the city walls of Glome is what? Known. It's clear. It's understandable. Everything outside the city walls is unknown. Medieval maps would be called what? Terra incognita, unknown land. And sometimes you go even farther off and it would say, here be dragons. Why? You don't want to go that far. Everything outside the walls is mystery. Okay? That's what Psyche is getting at here. The fox knows what? What's here. He uses the image of what? A city. This is the city. What does Psyche say? Cities exist where? On the ground. There's got to be something underpinning the city. There's got to be, in other words, more than what we see. There's something else, okay? Urul says, yeah, I understand about Unga. Doesn't the whole land smell of her? Yeah. Everything out here, it's all Unga, and it's all foul and rotten and smelly, and it is infesting this in Urul's mind. Okay? And she says, yeah, the fox is wrong. It never entered his mind, page 71, he was too good. It never entered his mind to believe that the gods are real and viler than the vilest men. Yes, the gods are real. And guess what? They're horrible. They're rotten. Why? They won't leave us alone. Urul thinks. Psyche. Or, just add another possibility to the equation. Or, they are real, but they don't really do these things. Could it be they do these things and the things are not what they seem to be? Seem. What does that mean? Condition contrary to fact. Kim Kardashian seems like a wholesome young virgin. No. That's a condition contrary to fact. Okay? And I'm not picking on, that's a truth. So she says, maybe when we look out here, we see things and what? We're not seeing them properly. And we're suddenly back in Tolkien's essay on fairy stories. And what do we need? Recovery. We need to learn to see correctly. How if I am indeed? In other words, she's saying, come on, work with me, Urul. What if, just maybe, I really am going to marry a god? A god? No, not like the gods the fox has taught us about. A real god. Because what are the gods the fox has taught us about? Those are seems. Those are seeming gods. Those are appearances. But the appearances are what? It's like your driver's license photo. How many of you think your driver's license photo is really you? It's not, right? Or any photograph. It doesn't capture you, does it? It's flat. It's one-dimensional, for one thing. And it doesn't say anything about what lies beyond the mask. Okay? She made me, in a way, angry. Why? Why is Aruel angry? Because she went there because she wanted to comfort her little sister. And what's her little sister doing? No, she's doing just the opposite.
Arguing with her.
She's arguing with her, but what else? She doesn't need comfort. She's actually looking forward to this. All right? So they go on talking back and forth. And Psyche says, I see what's bothering you. You think it devours it. You think the brute really does eat the offering. Could be. Mostly think so myself. Whatever it is, it means death. You didn't think I was such a child. You didn't come here thinking, I'm going to have to explain to Psyche. She's going to die. Poor little thing. She's so not. No. I understand. I'm going to die. She says. How can I be the ransom for all gloom unless I die? There's got to be blood. And if I'm to go to the God, of course it must be through death. Why? Why, if she's going to go to the God, if she's going to marry the God, why must she die? Well, what is the God? Immortal. She is mortal. She doesn't have the M in front. Okay? She is dying. He is undying. In order for the two to be joined, either he's got to die, but being immortal, that can't happen, or she has to what? Become immortal. How can she become immortal? You got to die. Okay? So, she goes on and says, and as for death, Bardia will look on it 6 times a day and whistle a tune as he goes to find it. In other words, Bardia is not afraid of death. Those 3 15-year-old junior ROTC cadets, they weren't afraid to die. That football coach wasn't afraid to die. We've made little use of the fox's teaching if we're to be scared by death. What does the fox say about death? When you die, you dissipate. So what is there to be afraid of? This is Socratic teaching. Socrates, as he was preparing for his death, he'd been sentenced to death by the Senate, of Athens because of leading the youth of Athens astray. Right? Some of Socrates' followers, Plato among them, tried to buy off his guards to let him escape and flee Athens. And he said, one, I'm not leaving Athens because to leave Athens, I might as well die anyways. Because in that time period, your city was your identity. It made you who you were. But his other big point was, you guys haven't learned anything from me, have you? Why are you afraid of death? And they all said, well, because it's unknown. He goes, okay, now stop for a moment and just think about that. Why are you afraid of what is unknown? Shouldn't it be the known things you're afraid of? Shouldn't it be, if I were standing right here and looking through that little tiny window, and I saw somebody standing at that window and pulls up an AR-15 or a handgun or some other weapon and looks in here. Now, that should cause me fear. Okay? But right now, looking at that window, there's nobody out there. In the little slice I can see. But what if there's somebody just outside my field of vision? Might be, right? Theoretically, there could be somebody right outside that door right now getting ready to burst in, kill us all. Pretty morbid thought. Okay? Happened about 10 years ago, Virginia Tech. Biggest mass school shooting in the United States. 32 people. Not with an AR-15, with a pistol. Okay? But what's outside that door right now is unknown. And I bet if I said, okay, class is over, Every one of you, get all your stuff together and walk out that door. Why? Because you're not afraid of what might be outside that door. But if that door represents death, and I said, all right, who wants to be the first one? You'd all be going back here against this wall. Not wanting to go through. Why? Because it's the fear of what lies beyond death. Read Hamlet's soliloquy. It's not a soliloquy, actually. His to be or not to be speech. It's the fear of that undiscovered country. Why? Because we have stories about what lies beyond, but we don't have proof. We don't know. We seem to know. Okay? She says, there were other Greek masters than the ones the fox follows. Masters who have taught that death opens a door out of a little dark room into a great real place where the true sun shines and we shall meet. What is she talking about?
Aslan's country.
Okay, if you've read C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, Aslan's country, the real Narnia. She's talking about Plato's allegory of the cave, which he puts in the mouth of Socrates. So it may be Socrates' allegory of the cave. What is it? In a nutshell, Socrates uses this image and says, you got a mountainside here, and it's got a cave. Okay? You go down in the cave, and you have a wall here at the back of the cave, and you have people who are chained, essentially, sitting here. Behind these people, make sure I get it right, they're chained so that they're only facing this direction. Behind them are people who are walking and such, and behind them there is a big fire. Okay? So these people see only what? Shadows. Shadows caused by these people walking, moving, etc. The shadows projected onto this wall. What's the shadow caused by? This flame. And what do these people who live their entire lives in this allegory here, chained, what do they think? This is reality. This is everything they know. This isn't just, I'm going to take you all, I'm going to take you to a cave, and I'm going to chain you up, and you're going to live there, and then your children are going to live there. No. This is humanity. This is all of us, Socrates is saying. Okay? So that's the first part. Then he says, imagine for a moment, I take one of these people, and I release them from their chains and allow them to turn around. And they see these people, and they see the fire. What do they then assume? This is reality? Well, they're still what? They're still in the cave. So I take them from there, and I take them out here, and they come outside the cave, and they see what? The sun shining. Okay? And their experience is, one, immediately blindness, because they see the real light, the real sun, and everything in here was what? An image of what occurs out here. Because out here they meet real people going about their real lives. Okay? This is Plato's idea of the world of forms or ideals and the world of copies or shadows. We, according to Plato, using C.S. Lewis's language, live in the shadowlands. Everything that we see here is this. We are seeing the projections on the wall. Kind of matrixy. What do we need? We need to leave the cave. We need to see the real light. What's the real light? How do you get to that? Well, the real light is the summum bonum, the highest good. How did Socrates define the highest good? God. One of the reasons he was executed, they labeled him an atheist. They said, you preach atheism. He said, wait a second, in his defense, I actually say that there is God. But God is not what you say God is. God is not Zeus and Hera and Apollo and Mars. Yeah, that's what we mean. You're against the gods. So you're an atheist. He's like, words have meanings. Atheist means no God. I'm teaching one God that is above all this. Okay? That's what she's getting at. We live in this little dark room. And what does death do? Death opens us up into the bigger, brighter room. That's why Socrates says, death is not to be feared. Death might be, he says, a great blessing. The end of the first Harry Potter novel. How many of you have read Harry Potter novels? Probably most of you have. What does Dumbledore tell Harry at the very end? To the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. Well-organized mind means you have your priorities right. And the priorities there means you know you must die. Those 3 15-year-olds, they had their priorities right. That coach, he had his priority right. That Broward County sheriff's deputy who stood outside for 4 minutes while the kids were being shot and was armed, he didn't have his priorities right. He was there when the shooting began. He did nothing. Why? He was afraid to go in. It's been standard practice after Columbine. First person on the scene, engage the shooter. Yeah, what might that mean? Yeah, I might die. Well, who's definitely going to die if you don't? A whole lot of other people. Okay? She says, and we might what? Meet again here. In other words, I'll see you later, O'Rule. It's not goodbye. Okay? O'Rule, there's not enough duct tape in the world for O'Rule to, her mind to accept this without exploding. Okay? So Psyche kind of takes another tack. I know, I'm not nearly as far as I need to be. She says, okay, what if I were to live? Bottom of 73. What do I have to look forward to? What do I have to live for? Is the world, this palace, this father, so much to lose? What more can I expect? And she goes on and says, I've always had kind of a longing for death. I've talked about since she was a little girl, what? Marrying the god of the gray mountain. And he would build me this great big gold and amber palace. And O'Rule thinks, what? Was life with me so horrible? Did I never give you any happiness? She goes, no. You gave me the happiest days of my life. But those happiest days of her life are what? Shadows. Compared to the real happiness. Thank you for the shadows. For what William Wordsworth would call in one of his most famous poems, intimations of immortality. Thank you for intimating to me what real joy, what real happiness is like. Because according to the Platonic doctrine, every joy, every happiness here is just a little foretaste of what real joy and real happiness will be like. Okay? And so she says, I've always been longing. I've always been looking for something more. And she kind of, channels 2,500 years before he writes the song. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Bono. And you too. Very Platonic ideas, by the way. She says, don't you understand, page 75? I'm going to the mountain. I'm going to the mountain I've talked about since I could first learn to speak. She is getting what? Her heart's desire. How many people have that opportunity? Okay? The sweetest thing, page 75 at the bottom, in all my life has been the longing to reach the mountain, to find the place where all the beauty comes from. Notice how she puts that. The mountain for her is what in this scheme? It's the sun. It's the source of all joy, all happiness, all light, etc. Okay? And then she says, top of 76, do you think it all meant nothing? All the longing for home? Notice, home. What is she saying? Gloam? Is not home. Her life here has been what? Preparation. Her life here has been what? A sojourning, a traveling. Oh, let's get all religious and use the medieval kind of term. A pilgrimage. To what? Somewhere else. Not to Jerusalem, not to Rome, but to somewhere else. Okay? So, they take her, and a rule tells us, page 80, they told me afterwards, I tried to start going down the stairway, fell. They carried me to my bed. And she was sick for a while. Notice, she missed it. She missed Psyche being taken off to the mountain. And she tells us, in her ravings, in her fever, everything changed into something else before you could understand it. Yet the new thing always stabbed you in the very same place. Notice, everything changed into something else what? Before you could understand it. As her mind starts to grasp onto this thing, it changed shape. Now mark yet again the cruelty of the gods. The nearest thing we have to a defense against them, but it's not really a defense, is what? To be very wide awake and sober and hard at work. Sober, serious. To hear no music, never to look at earth or sky, and above all, don't love anybody. Okay, so why hear no music? What effect can music have on you?
Experience happiness.
It can bring you happiness. It can influence thoughts. It can bring you happiness. It can inspire you. Okay. What about looking at earth and sky? How many of you have ever walked outside late in an afternoon and just gone, because the sky just looks like, Monet painted it. Just the biggest canvas in the world. And it just literally takes your breath away. That's what she's talking about. What is that an experience of? Beauty. Euphoria. That is an experience. Socrates and Plato would say, it's giving you, or let's use Tolkien, it's giving you a glimpse of what? Joy beyond the confines of this world. Tolkien's language. That joy is this. It's the light beyond the edges of this world. So, you can't let aesthetic beauty mean anything. So everybody needs to dress in gray. And lastly, you can't love anybody. Because what will the gods do? They will take them away from you. I mentioned the other day C.S. Lewis's A Grief Observed that he wrote after the death of his wife. When he starts writing that, he is talking like a rule. And this is the guy who wrote kind of the greatest 20th century defense of Christianity, mere Christianity. He was pissed when his wife died. I mean, really angry. He called God the great vivisector. Vivisection, anybody know what that means? Dissecting. God was the great dissector of people. Cut them up. That's pretty loaded language. Okay? He said, why? Why in the world would you bring into my life when I was a confirmed old bachelor, happy the way I was, this woman who turned my world upside down? He fell madly in love with her. And one of the things he talks about is missing her body. Okay? One of the people who was supposedly really close to C.S. Lewis said, nah, Lewis didn't really love her. They never really consummated their marriage. They never had sex. What a load of BS. He wouldn't talk about missing her body so much if they never had sex. Okay? He says, or she says, and moreover, a rule directs all our anger where? Is it at the gods? No, it's at Psyche. Why? Yep. Well, and she's gone at this point. But Psyche was real. Psyche, she held, she touched, she talked to her, she heard her, the gods. She's never talked to one face to face. That's going to be an image that's pretty important. She's never heard one's voice. That also is going to be important. So she takes it out on the one she can't take it out on. Okay. We'll stop there. Okay. We're going to have to somehow really pick it up. We will definitely finish